It's saying we're live, so let me check.
We're live on StreamYard, I know. Did it go to Facebook? Wait,
It,
what did you stream it to?
yeah, it is. Is it supposed to be a delay on Facebook?
Not if you didn't set one.
Huh?
Not if you went live. Are we live now?
Yeah, but it's
Okay.
like a delay because I'm looking at myself, and it seems like it's a delay of some
Oh
sort.
yeah, it's gonna do that. When you stream, it's gonna be a delay.
Okay. See, I don't know what I'm doing. All right. So let me do this. Okay. I shared it. Okay. You know I don't know what I'm doing. Okay. Um, let me see. Wendell, you joined my stream?
Well, I'm sharing it,
Oh.
and we're live now. You know that, right?
Oh. Oh, okay. All right. Well, welcome to Blackatics. I have two amazing people with me, two people that I really respect and I love and care for. My brother, Tori Jamal, which a media beast. He does a lot in the media industry, especially the gospel industry. Um, and just all around, is a one-stop shop. And my good friend Wendell, I call him Professor, over there at TSU. I have to get that college right because he will drive to Atlanta if I get it wrong. But when you talk about linguin, you know what I'm trying to say.
Linguistics.
I'm Southern. When you talk about communication, he got it. And so it is amazing to have him with us as well. So let's jump right into it. Today we'll be talking about politics, racism, and religion in the Black community and how it affects the Black community. And how we got to this point is I had a conversation with somebody that I really respect and I really care for and love. And he said something just so striking to me that I felt that it was a need for people to, understand how we got to this point in our history. He said that after one of the ways that we got here in a decline of Christianity was because President Obama on the world stage said that President Obama said that we are not a Christian nation. We are a nation of many different religions. And he said after that, we decline in our standing as a Christian nation. And it kind of took me aback because from me understanding history, I have never considered this country as a country, a Christian nation. And I'm only speaking for me. I'm not speaking for Tori or Wendell, but I have never, from the books that I've been reading and from the, even from our very recent history, has regarded this country as a Christian nation. And so it was a really startling comment that this man made. And I was really shocked because I thought that he was more intellectual than that. So it leads me to talk about a couple of things, and I'm going to open the floor up to Tori and Wendell. But Thomas Jefferson said, Congress shall not make no laws respecting an establishment of religion and the free execution thereof. And this came from the second president of the United States and one of the writers and of the Constitution. And I think he understood that we as a flawed body, we as a flawed people could not run a government and also run a religion at the same time. Because if you know anything about Thomas Jefferson, not only was he an adulterer, he was a rapist. One of his slaves was his mistress. He raped her, and he had fathered children, and she was really young. And so I believe that he even understood in his flawed self that we could not be a nation of religion when we also are flawed with slaves. And so I just want to hand it off to Tori and Wendell. What do you guys think I went wrong or went right with that opening?
Well, you went right or wrong. I mean, I agree. Um, as it pertains to I consider a Christian place or a Christian building or anything based upon how people are. So if we want to call America a Christian nation, we should have Christ-like ways, and that's not how our country is built. And we've already separated church and state anyway, or the Constitution separated church and state anyway. But as it pertains to America, has all types. We're the melting pot. We have all types of religion, Hindu, Buddhist, Muslim. So to say it's one thing means you exclude everyone else out, and that could be your neighbor. Your neighbor can be another religion. So you're saying that they're not a part of this country because they're not a part of your religion. That doesn't work for me. So as it pertains to America being a Christian nation, there's Christians here, but we can't say America is America and this is a Christian country, because then you are excluding people, human beings, out of the equation.
What about you, Wendell?
I think I agree with you both, but I'm still kind of torn because I always go back to what is the original premise of something. And so when you go back to, in other words, it's like a PWI, predominantly white institute, HBCU, historical Black colleges and universities, right? But the reality is, it's not just Blacks that are attending HBCUs, because it has progressed. It's not just European Americans that attend PWIs, because it progressed. But the title is still dedicated to the original premise. So looking at the United States in the original premise, I would agree that it is a country of Christian belief, because it was based around Christian beliefs of those times. We may have evolved from some of those beliefs, and we may have forgotten some of them, or we may have chosen to leave some of them behind. But the reality of the United States government is that we are in God we trust. Every single thing about our government goes back to religion, and it goes back to Christianity. So I do agree that we are not a country that is wholeheartedly dedicated to Christianity, but we are a country that is wholeheartedly created around the basis of Christianity. So I think it's okay either way.
Do you feel, Wendell, that it's Christianity or religion?
Well, I think religion and the franchise, that institution, I think that is where you get into a more subjective definition. So it's going to be based on the interpretation of how you were shaped and molded growing up, your race, your religion, your culture, your community where you find safety now. All of that goes into that part of it. So I don't think it's religion. I think it's Christianity itself, just Christ-like, that trust and belief in God, whichever God you choose to serve, Yeshua, whatever, whomever you decide to serve, but it is based on that. So not religion.
Well, I understand what you're saying, because when I was younger, I believed that same premise, like, oh yeah, this is a Christian nation, and the older I've gotten, the more books I've read, the more understanding I've gotten, is that you can call yourself a Christian, but is that what you're showing? Is that what people see? Is that what people want to be or want to aspire to be? When I think about the teachings of Jesus Christ in his stewardship, I think about, oh, I want to be more like him. I cannot honestly say that our past in saying that, oh, this is a Christian nation, I aspire to be like the people that came before us, because I understand it. And I'm gonna lead you into this. The reason why I say that was because what was one of the things that could have got a slave killed in slavery? One of the main things that could have got a slave killed in slavery: reading. Reading and understanding. That was one of the things that could get you killed. You can be killed as a white person teaching a black person how to read. Why? Because they understood if people read the Bible, they would have known that these are not Christian ways. You're not, this is not a Christ-like environment. You're raping me? That's not a Christ-like environment. You're holding me bondage is not a Christ-like environment. And so, yes, maybe the goal was to be a Christian nation, but they failed miserably. And keeping people from, when you keep people from doing something because you know it will better them, that tells you a lot. And so that leads me into, 1776, the first AME Baptist Church was created by Richard Allen. It grew out of the Free African Church out of Pennsylvania. So they had a different conceptual idea of how religion looked, because they were free slaves and not the slaves of the South. They were, not free slaves, but they were free. They wasn't slaves. However, they were still lesser than a white person by creating this church. They were not allowed to go and worship with white people in the same way that they were. And then the Kojic Church, Charles Manson, out of 1897. And the reason why I'm talking about these two predominantly black churches is, has tradition hurt the black church? What we do know is that these churches got their true believing, their understanding from a white supremacy or a white patriarchal way of worship. And so my question is, has the church been affected? Has the community at large been affected because we were not able to understand it for ourselves?
Can we start?
Huh?
Who you want to start?
Oh, it doesn't matter. Tori,
Okay.
Wendell.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think that we all, meaning every race of people that follow any form of Bible, we've all been manipulated to a certain extent. I think that we've all fallen victim to falsehoods, right? Because we know that the Bible has been reinterpreted a million times. So I think that everything that we base it on, we're basing it on an interpretation of an interpretation. In other words, King James, he dropped out, he left out certain books and he kept certain books, right? So that's a manipulation already there because he chose not to insert every book that tells a story. The other part of that is that it was interpreted because it was written in Old Hebrew. And in 1999, there was only, I want to say, 128 people on earth that spoke Old Hebrew. So my guess is now is even less, right? So there is no proof of what we're reading to be truth anyway. So when we say that the Bible and the traditional side of the aspects for Black people is mainly because we were never given the opportunity to really read for ourselves. I'm stuck at the place of contextually when you look at it. Even white America or white Europeans or the Portuguese or whomever was interpreting at that time, they were also going under a falsehood because they were being preached to believe whatever this person was saying was true. So whenever you're dealing with something where one person is telling you, giving you their opinion as true, as fact, then you are manipulated into believing it. Because the same book, and I say this all the time, it's like a broken record, but the book of Ephesians talks specifically about how it's okay to have slaves as long as you don't beat them. So at the point that we say everything in the Bible is true, then why are we crying about slavery if we believe in a God that was okay with slavery? But we have to remember that this is a book of opinion, number one, because these are men and women that walked the earth either before Christ, during Christ, or after Christ, right? So these are all based on their opinions, and it's also their interpretation. And then we have to deal with the scripting. Was it true to the original writings of the Bible? So all of that goes into play when we think about where we are as Black people. And that's why we have to get to a place where we have to just simply know right from wrong. And we have to filter through, we have to add in evolution and say that, okay, we're not doing that anymore. We're not going on the hill to sacrifice oxen, all of these things. So we have to just add intelligence. We have to insert that. And we have to think, okay, is this literal? And then we have to say God is love. So if God is love, then we have the right to reject anything that is of hate. So that's the way I see it.
Well, I would my thought is that tradition has also helped and hurt the church. I believe that in the ways that it's helped the church is that it's kept the church alive. Because you use tradition, you can pass it on, but you're passing on the same thing that you did previous. And I believe that's what the church has done is pass on traditions and cultures from previous times to when we were slaves, to when we were being beat. We sing the same songs that the slaves sang when they were wanting freedom. Even now while we're supposedly free. But we don't realize even in that music, in the way we preach, in the way we hoop, in the way we do all of these things are tied into what we've learned in tradition that may not currently work for today, for today's time, but because we're so traditionally minded in all denominations, is we're passing on and we're trying to now. I believe now the struggle is with the church and the current generation is that we've been exposed to so much current things. You can't hide behind, hey, when we were coming up in church, they were able to tell us whatever, and we weren't able to research it. We weren't able to find it. We couldn't see 8,000 pastors on television. We couldn't see churches and their ministries on television, or you couldn't go that quickly and find what you needed to see, or even Google whatever it is you want to know. The pastor can be preaching right now and say the wrong word or say the wrong message, and all you got to do is Google it and find out. But the issue is, I believe now the current church has gotten so stuck in what we learned from a long time ago that it's affecting how we handle and research today. I've been telling pastors as I do what I do is that you cannot preach the same sermon you preached last month or 2 months ago just because it's in your head and just because it's stuck. You're dealing with a different type of people overnight. Everything shifted, everything changed. And because so many pastors and preachers have a mindset that I got to do it the way I did yesterday, you're preaching to a pandemic generation now. You're not preaching to somebody that just bought a car or wants to buy a house. They're trying to figure out how to live and how to survive. And that's the thing that keeps us. You cannot come out of what you're in if you're stuck in tradition. And a lot of times in church, I believe I hear us preaching about the same thing, talking about the same message, asking God to deliver us from the same thing, asking God to deliver us from the same situations. Why? Because we're living, our minds are in the past, and we haven't pushed forth. My thing is with churches all the time. Talk to your members about what's going on today. Don't tell them about Mary and Joseph anymore. You've talked to them about that long enough. How do you build your credit? How do you make more money? How do you start a business? And what does God say about that? Because God says many things about that. But because we were traditionalists or we're living in tradition, we preach out of struggle, because that's what the preachers preached about when they years ago and in slavery time, and they preached that, and now people are still ministering traditionally out of struggle, and that's why our people stay in struggle a lot of times in religion, is because we have not stopped preaching a slave-like mentality sermon
Hmm.
or
Okay.
Go, yeah,
Can I say something? So
yeah.
like I'm not a church guru. Let me start off with that. So I'll lean to you for expertise. It's been a while for me since I've been a normal there. But what I am going to say is that I think that sometimes some of those traditions are needed.
Hmm.
Because I know with me, I will never forget my grandfather, which was a pastor. He used to preach a sermon about them dry bones. And I used to play about that sermon all the time. It was like a joking thing with me and my cousins. It was like a joke. But as I progressed in life and I started realizing what it truly meant, I still leaned to that sermon. And he preached it the exact same way. That's why I was able to mimic him so much. But I lean to it all the time now in my older age because it now makes so much more sense to me. So the reason I'm bringing it up is because when you say you don't need to preach that no more, some of those sermons they need to be in the cycle mode, because the lesson that lives in there, you may not understand it today,
Hmm.
but you may understand it better tomorrow. So I don't
Right.
think that all sermons are, we all know the prayer of Jabez, enlarge my territory, all of those great things. But the reality is, I don't necessarily go to church for politics. I don't
Hmm.
necessarily go to church to be told how to use my money. I don't, you don't necessarily go to church for those things. You want to separate them because then the church files critical to people saying that's all they want is money. That's
well,
all they talk about is money.
well, but I think Tori was talking about a broader scope, not in the sermon, but as far as making sure that your church knows how to, handle their finances and things like that, like with classes. I don't think he was talking about as far as preaching. And
Yeah, no. To me, those are the minute pieces of it. Because in my mind, even if I was a pastor, I haven't been to church in a long time like that either, so I totally understand that. But my thing is with that, um, our goal is to, I believe, in the church, is to get people to go to another level. So as you were talking about the sermon, you don't have to keep preaching to me about God's going to make a way if somehow we can figure out how God gave us the power to make the way. Uh, to me, that's the difference. So the messages, I believe, they don't dilute. I still lean on many sermons as well myself, but I believe there's a group of people that have understood where we are in times now. When they wrote the scripture, they wrote it based upon what was going on in that particular time, and I believe we base religion and church and all of those. They try to, they wear the tippets and the hats and all, and they don't even know what it means. If you ask them, they cannot tell you or define what it means for them to do that. So if you're coming to somebody with all of these things on, they don't know. Definitely in this generation, I don't even know your name, but I see all of these things, and they can't even explain it to people in this season,
and
and that's what makes it difficult.
and so let's open up the broader, because like you said, you haven't been in church in a while, and Tor hasn't been in church in a while. But just think about, you two are very intelligent, very open-minded, very astute in knowledge in different areas. But think about the broader concept of what the church has done to damage its reputation in the Black community. I would give you a couple examples. Um, I know everybody has seen the Clark sisters, and I'm not talking about the way that they were raised. I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking specifically about the scene with Dr. Mattie Moss Clark in the church, at the council. And they told her, it was just so jarring to me that they told her that your job is not to go and spread the gospel to the world. It was like, if anything in that movie got me, that got me. That got me. Because even though that happened 30, 40 years ago, it is still very relevant in today's church. And I will give you examples. The drug epidemic and the HIV epidemic. The church was nowhere. They did nothing. Why? Because the people, it was a bunch of homosexuals and drug addicts. And so the church has no job with that. Just crazy. But they were their people that they could have captured, loved, and made crusaders of the faith. And so, to me, tradition has gotten us to a place where we forgot the true teachings of Jesus Christ. We forgot why he was followed and why he performed the miracles, why he went to the places that nobody else would go. I mean,
but I honestly believe that people know what Jesus did. They preach about it and teach about it all the time. But I believe that people make their Jesus fit their views and their mentality. And that's just how people are going to be. So I learned that myself being in church. I work for so many churches and so many church people, I can't even count them. And that's with everybody, not even just church people, not even just with Black people. People are considered, they focus on what they want to be focused on. So even in the church, a church person will walk over somebody that they don't care about that's dying. But if it's somebody that they care about, they're going to lose their mind. I believe that's what every situation as it pertains to people in the church. So we're looking at the church to be there when something like a pandemic happens, or HIV/AIDS, or any other social thing. The church isn't.
The violence epidemic. I mean, you can go and on.
Don't call them for that. Because that's not what they're looking for. But we don't have many Martin Luther Kings. There was a time where there was preachers who were also. Martin Luther King was extremely religious, but also extremely political. He was able to combine the two, which is very, very difficult for many people, I believe, to do right now. I think, if we think about Jamal Bryant, he's trying. Some other pastors try to get into it, but
And I have an issue with Jamal Bryant because of his response with his early response with the epidemic. Because at first he was against them shutting it down, and then when it became politically advantageous, he flipped the script. And I was really troubled with that because a lot of these people listen to these pastors. They listen to these pastors, and what we are seeing is that many people are dying because they were listening to their pastors. I mean, yeah.
Well, I'm just going back. I'm sorry to like the Matty Moss, for example. I think everything is always based on interpretation, right? And what you take from it.
Right.
Because what I've always taken from the story, because I heard the story before I saw the movie, right?
Okay.
I kind of heard the story throughout. If you've ever been a part of the church, you kind of hear the story about the Matty Moss when they did the Grammys, right? But the way I saw it was they were okay with the Clark sisters performing there. They knew the Clark sisters were performing there. They had already gotten over their issue with the Clark sisters doing somewhat accidentally circular music. What gagged them was when they looked on the screen and Matty Moss was up there, because she wasn't in the group. She wasn't a singer with the Clark sisters. And so when they saw her on the stage, it was a brand messaging issue because she was also over the music ministry for the whole Kojic church nationally. So it caught them off guard, and she didn't tell them. So the way I see that is kind of like if you are the CEO and you have a board, and someone does something and they don't let the board know they're going to do it, and the board find out when it's already happening, there is going to be an issue. So I saw that as more of it was more technical, and they made it. I feel like the movie exploited it, and I feel like they exploited it because that's what a lot of people do, and they made it
Yeah.
sexist. But the reality is, she did not sing with the Clark sisters, and
Well,
so when they found out by her being on stage,
I didn't really look at it as a sexist point. I looked at it as a point of, you
well,
know,
I guess what I'm ultimately saying is that it was a business decision. It at that point it was a business because she was the face of the music ministry for the Kojic Church, and so for them to find out that she was going to be up there while she's up there and they're dancing around, there was an issue. So they knew the Clark sisters were going to be there. The problem was her, but I just wanted to say that part as far as interpretation. But as far as the preachers and the aspect of not choosing when they want to get into things as far as HIV, the crack epidemic, all of those things. I think sometimes the church do get a bad look, right? I think that and sometimes you have to admit that they're damned if they do, damned if they don't. Because in this day and age, ministers are ridiculed if they become political. They are often seen as they're in it for the money, they're getting something under the table. It's like, so it's almost like damned if you do, damned if you don't. So I kind of understand. Where I'm more so against churches, unfortunately, is when they forget to preach love. And I'm like, I kind of get tunnel vision with that, because all I think is God is love, right? That's all I was taught my entire life. God is love. God is love. God is love. So if God is love, then why do you hate people that love God also just because they're different? And that's where I get into my issue with the church. I think about your Nat Turners. I think about, you think about all of you think about like he said, Martin Luther King, but I think more or less about the people that was with Martin Luther King, that was really, really, the Thurgood Marshalls. I think about the men and women, Bayard Rustin. I think about all of these people that were truly but pushing this man of God. They chose Martin Luther King because he was a man of faith and he already had a following. But it was really the people that was the driving force was the people in the background that was kicked to the curb. And so I think about Martin Luther King as an example, because when the FBI told him, we're gonna expose you and we're gonna say you're sleeping with Bayard Rustin, he went to Bayard Rustin and he said, you have to leave my camp, right? But you're a man of God. You're a preacher. Everyone loves you. They're already going around saying you're a whore. You're okay with that. But at the point that that you're afraid that a rumor is going to come out that you're messing with another man, instead of you standing by this man in love and in faith, you being a man of faith, you tell this man that y'all have to part ways. So I think that speaks to what exactly my issue is with the church. The church loves you conveniently. They love you conveniently, but once that convenience has run its course, they no longer have a need for you. That's my issue.
okay. Well, I mean, like I said, I agree with that. I mean, that is the point that I have been making, is that, and I think Tori froze. I'm not quite for sure, but
I was gonna say he's really looking.
I, I think he froze or something happened. Um, but yeah, so that is the thing that has troubled me for forever, is that the church took love as like a conditional thing. Oh, I love you, or I
Mhm.
love you. And I believe that has really hurt the church and really damaged the church for a generation. Um,
Mhm.
because of like the crack cocaine epidemic and the HIV AIDS and all of the things that the church could have been out in the head. And I don't know where you were going with the damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of thing, because who if nobody's gonna lead, the church should lead. You know,
But lead in what way? Like, is it correct for church to lead politically? Is
no,
it correct?
you don't need politicians to go into your community and preach love. You don't
Well,
need.
no, no. But what I'm saying is that when they're all intertwined. There's no way of taking politics out of an epidemic or out of drug abuse, because normally who churches bring in are politicians when they're trying to partnership, because they need them to finance it. They need the money. They need grants. So it's kind of hard to pull them apart. But when I say damned if you do, damned if you don't, I'm saying that if they stand and they try and really help, then they have to deal with people saying they're doing it for money. And that's just the reality. If a church would have gotten one of these AHF grants of $1 million for HIV/AIDS epidemic fighting, then people would have, next thing they would have said is they're stealing money. Did you see what the pastor got a new car? They have to deal with all types of stuff. So sometimes it's easy to just wash your hands.
Right. So, and so this leads me into our next segment, and I wanted to because race is a big part of the Black church and the confrontations that we have had throughout our history. So it is crazy that I really gotten this recently. While we don't go to church, that we are very segregated on Sunday. I'm talking about 6 or 7 years ago. I was very naive to why Black people and white people or people of color did not go to church with white people. And the election of Donald Trump helped me understand why that is the reason. And it's heartening to say because we read out of the same Bible, but I think we're getting different. We're getting two different things out of it because we can't be getting the same thing. We just can't. I cannot honestly say that the Bible that I am reading is the same Bible that a lot of our white brothers and sisters are reading. Do you disagree with that, or will you agree?
I agree. I think that the interpretations are different. Yeah.
So, what would you think would be one of the reasons why we're so divided on Sunday? I mean, and particularly on Sunday.
And you mean as races, as the different races, correct?
Yeah.
I think it's basically we're different. We're cultured differently. I think that's pretty much it. I think that at the end of the day, you look for comfort. So it's a clique. And the easiest clique when it comes to religion is that of race, because it's not just black and white Spanish. They are definitely segregated. You have Nigerians are segregated from some other African cultures, right? You have Baptists are separated from Catholic, and Catholic are separated from Methodist, and we all can be Black. So I think that you look for comfort, and normally when you look for comfort, you're not willing to compromise when it comes to religion. So I think it's just a matter of like-minded people. I don't think that it's good or bad. I just think it is what it is.
Okay. Well, I once again, I think that I can go to church and with somebody in AME and understand what they're talking about, because I think the struggle is the same. I think that the understanding is the same. I don't believe, and the crazy part is that a lot of our white brothers and sisters have the same experiences that a lot of the Black brothers and sisters have, but their understanding is different.
They have a different. I don't think they have the same experience.
What
I don't think we share. I don't share any experience.
Or a poor white man in West Virginia with, in the backwoods. Have you been in the backwoods of West Virginia?
Yeah, I don't share, and I don't think this is a bad thing, but I don't share an experience with any white person. Because when you say experience, that you have to unpack what an experience is. So when you say experience, that doesn't mean we went to the same school, because we can go to the same school and not have the same experience, because your experience is coming from that of a white American and mine is coming from that of a Black American. So the reactions to the two of us are completely different. So I think that, yeah, we can physically attend some of the same things, and we can both be poor, we can both be middle class, or we can both be upper class. But my best example is Barack Obama was the president of the United States and was still treated like shit from trailer trash. So the experiences I can't identify with. I think they're too polarized.
Okay. So, so my question is, how do you reconcile people like Paula White and Franklin Graham and Kenneth Copeland? How do you reconcile these religious figures in the community? And and I'm gonna give you a couple of examples they have said about this president. Um, Kenneth Copeland said hatred towards Trump opened the door for the coronavirus. He said this. He said this March the 17th. Billy Graham, the son of Billy Graham's son, Franklin Graham. If hold on, yeah, Franklin Graham. He said in an article written by Christianity Today, the Democrats in total partisan attack on Trump. That's what he wrote from a newspaper that was written by his father. Um, I'm gonna read you some excerpts from that magazine. It says, "I'm not really making a political argument or judgment about him because that's not our expertise at Christianity Today. I am making a moral judgment that he's morally unfit, or even more precisely, is his public morality that makes him unfit. Anybody in leadership has none of us are perfect. We're not looking for saints, but a president has certain responsibilities." And I'm saying this to say, um, where is the disconnect between white America and black America when it comes to religion and racism? Because I have found myself not really understanding their walk with religion to the point where it's made me angry that they even call themselves Christians. Um, and sometimes I battle with it, I struggle with it because I'm like, oh, well, I don't have the right to not call them Christians. But then when I think about they are they bashed President Obama, they called him a Muslim, they called him everything but a child of God. But they they glorified this man. They glorified
Mhm.
Donald. They, I mean, I just don't understand it.
Yeah. Um, Again, I think that that's one of those deep ones that it's a lot to unpack with it because the same position I can stand in.
One's
There he is.
lot to with.
So the same position that I can stand in to say that they're not Christians because of some of the moral things they accept or they applaud is the same position I would stand in to say a black man isn't a Christian if he's homophobic, or a black woman isn't Christian because she's homophobic. You know what I'm saying? So I think that it truly goes back into their faith without works is dead type of feel because I do believe that sometimes we don't have a choice in the way we think sometimes. You know, if you are born and raised to believe something is real, something is true, then sometimes it's not very easy to break away from that. And so some of these Caucasian brothers and sisters that applaud a Donald Trump, they're applauding him now because it's one of those black versus white things that they don't want to accept. You know, they don't want to accept the reality that they only like him because he is so exploiting of other races. But they don't want to accept that. But it reminds me of George W. Bush when he was president, how white America loved him. Republicans adored him. They could not get enough of him. But as soon as he wasn't president anymore, they started saying how they didn't like him and how they don't trust him and how he baffled all the time, right? So it shows you that they are just loyal to a fault. And so it's not always that they truly believe it. You ever heard when people say when you're growing up, they'll say, you lie so much you believe your own lies? It's kind of like that. Like they didn't want him, they wanted Ted Cruz, and that was it. But when they realized they were stuck with him because Ted Cruz couldn't beat a Hillary Clinton, they just learned to love him. And then they fell in love with him. But when he's no longer in office, they will quickly fall out of love with him. The two-face.
Well, but that I think that goes to the to my I think that goes to my broader question. All right. So or my broader my broader question is that we can't truly call ourselves a Christian nation because you have the white evangelicals and then you have black Christians, black Baptists, black on one side. We believe a totally different thing than they do, right? We believe that we believe about things like humanity and you making sure that we provide for the least of these and providing a safety net. But your white evangelicals say pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
But the Bible wasn't created for the United States. Like
Right.
when you say we,
But
like,
that is
the
my
Bible was for the world. But I still think it goes back to what I said in the very, very beginning when we first started this. And I said that the whole book is a book of interpretation and a book of opinions. I think that to say that they don't believe in this isn't fair because they may believe in it just under the definition that they were taught.
Yeah.
Like Osama bin Laden felt like he was fighting a holy war. All of history says that Osama bin Laden,
yeah.
but all of history says that they're fighting a holy war. But to us, they are evil. It is demented to have children teaching them how to kill so early on. Suicide, murder is wrong. Like to us, all of these things goes against our God. But to them, they were fighting on behalf of their God. But it was the way they were cultured. So I think it's unfair to say they don't. It's not that they don't believe in it. They don't believe in it the way you were raised to believe in it.
Yeah. I kind of I'll piggyback on that sentiment. And for me, I stopped expecting people to think how I wanted them to think because I think that's where we mess up a lot. Uh, they didn't grow up in any circumstances how we grew up. Like we go back to the preaching and how we were taught in the church and how we were taught in our schools. It's totally different than the way they think. So when they speak out of their mouth, they're speaking from their interpretations of how they always grew up in their cultures, and they always had their things. They've been where they were for many years before us. So they're speaking from a language that many of us don't even understand because many of us had to grow up in the struggle. We had to grow up without. A lot of them had everything they needed. So when they preach or when they speak or even when they support presidents like Donald Trump or whoever they support it based upon where they came from. So even as it comes to white evangelicals, I look at them like I look at everybody else. Even black people. We have our own stuff, even within our communities. How divided the church is from denominations we have. If I look at it, I know we got hundreds of denominations, and they all have their way of thinking. There's some black churches that support Trump. There's some black churches that hate him. And that's how big the spread is just within our community. So I always say we can never expect anybody outside of us to understand where we are because their minds can't even begin to imagine it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so yeah, because people that know me know that, anytime I see evangelicals or, Republicans, and not all Republicans are bad because I tweet out a lot of things that Republicans are saying. So don't take it that I'm saying that all Republicans bad. I'm talking about the white evangelical aspect of it, that I believe is just not in step with the teachings of Jesus Christ. I don't
see them for who they are. See them for who they are.
Yeah.
Their mission isn't to. I mean, some of them maybe, I don't know, but their mission is not to bring anyone together. There was a situation where Kirk Franklin at the Dove Awards, how that thing is ran by evangelicals and how he had to come back and talk about how he was unfairly mistreated as the number one black gospel artist.
Yeah.
against all these evangelicals. And he was like, you know what? I know it's not going to change. We know it's not going to change because it's something that's rooted within your heart and in your mind that we can't change. It's a
Yeah.
color thing. And they're not looking at us based upon even us. When we think about our homes, we look out for our homes, our houses, our families. They do the same thing. And so it goes from their homes, their houses, their families to their culture, to the people that look like them. We talk about unfair business and jobs. Oh, they don't give us the jobs. No, they're not going to give it to us. They're going to give it to people that look like them first, and they'll give us what we need to say, oh, I gave it to them. So we, I don't look at them to be a moral compass. They're not. They're not.
Okay.
They're just people with a title
I agree.
and make a lot of money.
Make a lot of money. So
They're doing that money.
I think Kenneth Copeland is at about $700 million. I think that was the last thing I saw for Kenneth.
How many politicians' pockets they're in? That's why they're gonna fight with them to the end.
Right.
They got the money to make them talk. They got the money to make the politicians move, and their congregations do as well because they got all these millionaires in their congregation,
Yeah.
so they can
Don't
run.
forget, Barack Obama, when he took office in 2008, he took like 100 million from HBCUs and sent it to the church. And then Donald Trump, he just sent them 50 million. Like, and then they're nonprofit. Like they're not paying any taxes or anything. Like they're
Right.
getting grants and they're getting like I agree with him wholeheartedly that at the end of the day, it's about lining their pockets. And then in the meantime, they're gonna keep telling you what they need to tell you to keep you coming, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, it's just a matter of it is what it is. I hate to say that over and over again, but
It is what it is. Yeah. Yeah.
Has the coronavirus or COVID-19 placed a new great responsibility on the church? Has it moved the church in a way that they have to be responsive in a different way for the better or for the worse? What do you guys think about that? Or does the church have a role at all? I mean, do you see the church having a greater role at all?
I don't.
I would say
I,
it's
I don't.
been really disappointing. I think churches could have led the way
I
with
don't think so.
well, no. What I'm saying is led the way in telling their congregations, that this was an issue, and one of those things like being honest with your people. Yes, I know you're sanctified, but you need to stay home and be sanctified. Don't
But we're
come.
talking about an institution that has an issue with being forthright and upcoming. Like they're not. I knew when this happened that the church was going to be last. I knew that there was going to be a battle, a fight. I knew it because we're always last. Just like the technology piece. When now everybody's like, oh, we got to get on, we got to get online, we got to get on. But the church has been saying how much of the devil the internet is and the computers are. But now you have to have it. We I don't think they have a responsibility because I don't. We go back to the beginning of the conversation. The church is behind. You don't. If we're asking them to speak to us in the current time, I think what they're doing is good for what they're doing for whomever they're doing it for,
Yeah,
and that's all. Just deal with what you as it comes to leading a groups of people or no. I don't expect them
yeah.
to do nothing. I don't
I
want any
agree.
information.
I agree wholeheartedly. I think the only responsibility the church has in this is to lead by example. Like that's the only
Yep.
responsibility that they have is to lead by example. There is no way the church could have done anything to help or hinder this. All it can do is lead by example, and it has not done a good job of that. It's done a piss poor job. There's been, I want to say, I know in the city of Houston, at least 80% of the churches actually did follow the guidelines.
Good.
Like I will say, at least 80% of the churches really did,
I think a
especially
lot did
the
here
bigger
too.
churches. The bigger churches definitely shut down immediately. They start having but they were also equipped to go live. They were
Mm,
equipped to. They already had ministries that are already airing on television, so it was
right.
easier for them. But they did. But I don't think it's fair. I think it's unfair. And as much as I talk jive about the church on this live, for whatever reason, I found myself defending the church a lot because I think that is unfair to expect the church to lead the way anyway with science and medicine. And I
Yeah.
think that we have to remember that there is a separation of church and state. And I think that one thing, the church has been pampered in the United States because there is a separation, but yet we do so much for the church. So is there a true separation? So I think that if anything, the government should have forced them to shut down, but instead you have laws that are constitutionally bound that says that the church has the right, to still have service no matter what. They can't stop them,
Mm,
right? So I think that the church is within, all they have the responsibility of is leading by example. They shouldn't be trying to
yeah.
give no recommendations. They should not be doing no counseling. Their counsel should be not go beyond the ministry in this time of need. They should be praying. That's it.
Pray. And I think this is a good time for the church to be the light or comfort,
Yeah.
because people need that right now. And you can teach or show comfort through the word.
Hmm.
A lot of times we a lot of churches, and I'm not even saying churches, people in ministry. I'm seeing it online. I'm sure you are too. People use these moments to prostitute religion or the Bible or the
Ooh.
gospel, when
Ooh.
this can be a great time. I'm sorry. This can be a great time to comfort people, because people are really hurting. People lost their jobs. People are sick. Families are sick. But
Ooh. Cole, you
because we,
talk about me with words here. He said,
oh no, I don't play no game.
my, I got nervous. I was like, forgive me, God. You be talking about me.
don't be, don't be nervous.
No,
But
I'm here for
but
it, but woo.
but yeah, they have, and they've done it so long, and they've done it so easy. I remember making the decision. I'm gonna make this quick because I know we on the live. Making the decision between going and doing business full time or doing ministry. Because years ago I was in ministry, doing a lot of stuff with ministry, and I knew, because of me and my media background and what I could do and how I could build an image or all of these things. I was like, hey, I can go preach conferences. I can go do this. I can go do that. Um, and make all this money, uh, or go do business. And my thing was, I had to go and do business instead of ministry, because I didn't want to find any ways to utilize the Bible to do it. And that's what a lot of people are doing now. Hey, people are sick. Let me give, or people are going through. Let me give you a prayer cloth that costs $100. Let me do this. No, that's not the time for that. It's time to comfort people. And that's what I believe. If anything, the church can be utilized now to comfort and maybe provide help. Use your sanctuaries as food banks or something.
I was thinking about traditions when Tori was talking about traditions earlier, and I remembered one tradition when I was a kid growing up that my grandmother taught us was about ushers wearing white gloves at church. And she was saying that it came from, and then of course you do your proper research anyway. It came from during slavery, and they had black people working, and they had to wear gloves because white people didn't want them to touch anything that they touched. How
Right.
in the hell did that become a tradition of a free black church to keep ushers wearing gloves because it represent we don't want you to touch anything that we touch? Are you serious? I just thought
Because
about that. The
Auntie said you gotta do it.
yeah,
You gotta do it because Grandma wore hers, so you gotta wear yours too. Then tell
we
us
make
why
it
Grandma wore
fashionable.
it.
They do colored gloves and stuff.
Well,
Oh God.
well, I mean, but like I said, I do believe, and it's crazy that you did say you had to defend. You felt like you had to defend the church. I know by talking to you and by dealing with you, to get you riled up is for me to get on the other side of you, and then you whatever I choose on the other side of you, you gonna go the other way. So if I say blue, you gonna say black. And
I love it.
that's okay. and that's why I love to have you on whatever, because you're gonna find a way to get on the other side of me, but that's all right.
No. No.
Because you have been.
But I love, but I do love God. Like I do love God, and I no, what I'm saying is that the baseline of my life that came from church has truly catapulted me throughout life. So it's not that I'm angry with church.
Not at all.
I become angry with the new institution of church.
Yeah.
And I become angry with some of the sermons that did teach hate, and they preached this separation that was unneeded. So that's what upsets me. But I will never be able to say that church did not help me. So therefore, it's hard for me to just wholeheartedly go against, this thing that I know created such a safe place for me mentally, and it has helped me emotionally to this day. So when I say that I can't believe I was defending church, I'm saying I can't believe I'm defending church, but in the tense that we're talking about it, I can believe it, because I do still say preach love. Like I've been saying this whole call, the church is supposed to teach love. And when you stop teaching love, that's where I have a problem.
Okay, Peter. Good old Peter. So I'm gonna I just want to do an outline. Pretty much it wasn't to bash the church or but every institution has to have its critics. We know this in history from the Reformation with the Catholic Church, on and on and on and on. I'm a history buff, so I can go all the way back to Rome. But we understand that there has to be a healthy critique on the institutions that are in our lives and that direct us personally. Like I said, no matter what you think about the church, there is a role for the church in our everyday lives.
Absolutely.
It's just a matter of, are they healthy to continue to be an influence? And I think you guys perfectly summed it. They just need to pray.
Pray and comfort. But the church is help to those who, and there's millions of people. So I mean, people are getting something from it, and that's my thing. I'm happy if anybody is getting whatever you're going to get from the church. My thing is when I speak out is when the church does something that affects everybody, and that's what bothers me when preachers or pastors or churches do things that are just outside of what people should be consuming. That's when I have a problem. But other than that, I don't expect to get an apple juice from an orange. And that's how I look at the church. I need orange juice right now. You give an apple juice, I want orange juice, and that's just how it is for me. But somebody out there want oranges. I mean apples. So let them eat the apples and be happy. That's how I feel about it.
Okay, awesome. Wendell, do you have anything else you wanted to say to that? So not only is Blackatics, we talk about politics, we also talk about business as well. And I really want to get in a safe space where we are building each other up. We're talking about our Black businesses. There's a report out in the New York Times. I mean, you can CNN.com money that Black business will be the #1 business that will be affected during this pandemic. They're not getting the resources they need. They're not getting the money they need. And so when you talk about race, you talk about things like religion and how that the churches should be the instrumental. They're taking your tithes. They should be figuring out who their business owners are. Hey, we can help you. We can do this. We can send out, even if it's not financial, they can send out emails to their members to say, hey, we got 20 members that have businesses, patronize them, and the members will listen.
Mm-hmm.
But the pastors and the leadership are not taking the time to support their own. And I'm not saying they're doing it maliciously. They may not just know what to do.
But they don't know what to do.
But there are many Black businesses that will suffer. They will not come back from this. Livelihoods will be lost. And so I asked the people that came on today to spotlight a business, talk about a business, support. We have to support our Black and minority-owned businesses. Wendell, do you have a business?
Oh, yeah. So the business that I'm spotlighting is Education Empowerment Zone, EEZ. And EEZ is the owner, CEO is Dr. Shara Morgan Saki. She is an excellent communicator, longtime educator. And this is a consulting firm. Obviously, it deals directly with education, but she also helps companies build their brand. She does a lot of online things, and the way she's been affected during this time is companies simply they don't have time to deal with her right now. Because they're dealing with emergencies. So of course her income is now affected because she makes her money off of businesses bringing her in to create for them. And she makes her money by school districts bringing her in to create curriculums for them. So that's definitely an excellent business. It's a national business, but it's housed out of Houston, Texas. And that is Education Empowerment Zone.
And I will post all of this on Black Atix as well. Corey?
I thought you wanted us to talk about our business.
It doesn't matter. I mean, you have a business, it does not matter.
Oh, okay. Well, I have a business. So with I do kind of the same thing. And I will say I've been preaching for the past 8 years for people to start a business. Never knowing that a pandemic or anything like this would happen, but I've always known that just being a business owner, that money doesn't come to Black business owners easy at all. Even now, when there's hundreds of billions of dollars being put out into the ecosystem, it's not coming to us. I put in my loan. I know a lot of other people have, and I've seen companies getting millions of dollars, and I've seen the regular Black business owner not. And I've always said, that as a Black people, outside of religion, we have to build economy and economics. So when things like this happen, we can lean on our people for everything we need, but we wait to the last minute. And sometimes this is where it leads us. So for me, the pandemic has been a blessing and a curse. I do media, marketing, video, photography, things that people need online. So it's been great for me, just being able to provide these services for people during this time, helping churches get online, helping businesses get online, the websites, getting those developed, commerce sites. That's been great. My company is called Elite Media Studios, www.elitemedia.studio, info@elitemedia.studio. Also, Tori Elite on Instagram. I've provided marketing materials and branding materials for many artists and churches and business owners, and I help people really get their businesses kicked off and started. That's my passion. That's my gift, and I love to see people get things from A all the way to Z, and I'm gonna make sure you do it.
All right, and we'll post that on Black Atix as well. I of course I have a couple of businesses. One of the things that you learn is to do a lot, get a lot of fires under the, a lot of fires under the pot, so that in case something like this happens, you have something to rely on. And I'm not going to really delve into my business because I will be giving out some shirts and things like that from Ramsey's Clothing Company. And, but once again, like I said, support, reach out, call somebody, check on somebody. A lot of people are not doing well. A lot of people are not managing well. I have a family to lean on. I have people that I can call. I have people that are checking up on me. But a lot of people don't have that. A lot of people don't have that that fallback, and a lot of people don't have just the understanding that even if you don't have family, you got God to talk to. They don't even have that concept. And so a lot of people are hurting. So I want to make sure that before anything, I give out the National Suicide Prevention number at 1-800-273-8255, 1-800-273-8255. If you need somebody to talk to, please give them a call. You killing yourself is not going to, that's it. If you kill yourself, that's it. But there are people that can help you to pull you back from the brink if you're going through. Did anybody write any comments to you guys? Because I know that it splits up, so I can't see all the comments. Did anybody ask any questions or anything that need to be answered? No? Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Tori. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Wendell. You guys have. I thought my lights were about to go out because it's stormy.
It went straight out. The storm came to your house then. It was bad.
Oh yeah.
Straight on out.
Oh yeah. So thank you guys so much.
You're welcome.
Enjoyed it, and you guys have a good night.
Good night,
You
sir.
too. Thank you. Good night. Nice to meet you. Good night.